for that, lad. There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to Eamon, and now they're really roaring. And I can tell you, there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
Hello everybody, you're very welcome to the Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show. My name is Paul Rouse and I'm joined today by the former Mayo footballer and manager James Horan, by the former Donegal footballer Eamon Magee, and by Maurice Brosnan of the Irish Examiner. This is our bumper championship preview. So let's just start with the very basics. Eamon, who's going to win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship?
Just straight into it. I think it's going to be Galway. And I think the reason is that they've been about for a bit, which is vital for that final stage. They've been in two finals and their injuries look to be clearing up. So once they can get everybody on the field, I think they'll be near enough Sam Maguire.
Maurice, who's going to win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship?
I think Kerry. They got exactly what they wanted out of the league. Their path to knockout stages now is pretty decent. You'd back them to get to a semi-final anyway, and I think they've righted some of the wrongs from last year. So right now I'm saying a Kerry Donegal final and Kerry to win it.
James.
Yeah, I said Donegal at the beginning of the year. I still think Donegal. I think they paired back the last few rounds of the league. I think this year they've got additional players back. Obviously, Michael Murphy back. I think year two of the project, their energy will be bang on. Their focus will be bang on. So yeah, Donegal for me.
Okay, so I'll throw my line in. I think Kerry will win the All Ireland. I said it at the start of the year, and I'll base it on we'll get stats corner out of the way as well early. So I'll base it on the statistical fact that half of all Irelands that have been played have been won by either Dublin or Kerry, and I think Kerry are ahead of Dublin. So I think Kerry will win the All Ireland. And there is the not small evidence that was produced by the league as well. Now we're going to tease out why each of us has made those predictions as we go province by province, and we're going to start in Ulster, home of the defending All-Ireland champions Armagh, who we'll come to in a minute. But Eamon, when did Donegal people get so cocky that winning a league just didn't matter to you?
I don't know. That's what kind of occurred to me, that we seem to be in this privileged position to turn our nose up at a national medal, and I don't know where that came out of, but I just think it was down to the scheduling, and everything is so measured to the last degree in terms of the preparation, and I think it's very hard to focus for a league final while you're putting a percentage of your training onto Derry, and I think that was the logic behind it, but it's something we need to look at going forward. We can't have a situation where the league final is being dismissed like that there, and I don't think it's good prep. I don't think it's good prep. I think the logic that you're in Division 2 and every game matters.
Yes.
All them teams in Division 2 want, you gotta win, and I don't think the prep of that environment that you've been in, and you got to win situation, you got to win environment, that affects your decision making, that affects what managers do in terms of prep, and you learn about players, and I don't think you find out as much about players, and that's in a game where do we really want to win this? We've got what we wanted out of here. Do we really want to get the league final? So and I think we've got to fix that. We've got to fix that from a scheduling point of view. So long-winded answer. I would love to have Donegal to have got another national titles. I think it's a good habit to get into, but I think Jim was right in what he was saying.
Do you think that Donegal are going after the Ulster Championship?
Yeah, Jim's been saying that from day one, how much he values the provincial. I would disagree with him. a good bit on it. Not just, I was going to say slightly now, but I would disagree with him a good bit on terms of the value of the provincial. But he grew up loving that Ulster Championship, and he wants to win it. He wants to go on to the All Ireland series as Ulster champions, and you've got to respect that. And I think this year will be no different. They'll be going to Ballybofey. They'll want to win. And they'll should they meet Mana in the next game, they'll want to win that, and that's they just want to win Ulster. And Jim's been open and on record as saying that.
So if you had a choice, if you were in that position and that assault on all competitions is really tricky, would you have privileged the National League over the Ulster Championship?
Big statement there. That's nearly sounds like heresy there to even say them words. But I think it would. I think the value of the provincial championships, all of them, and we'll talk later on them, have been really, really diminished. And I don't think, based on your geographical location, that you have an advantage straight away. And to have the provincial championships tied into the All Ireland series, I don't think we should be. I don't think we should be doing. So I'd probably say more emphasis on the league and go for the league, and then nearly relegate the provincial. I just think it's gone that way now.
James, you've said from the beginning of the year that you think Donegal will win the All Ireland. Why is that?
Well, the first thing that you always look at is the players. They've really good players. They have a lot of really good players. They have pace, tempo. Like last year, we saw quite a bit of it ran out of steam in the end. But they've just added experience and know-how to that, and plus they've got a very good manager. So you put all those things together, and how they started the league this year. They've got an awful lot going on. They can score heavy. They've Langan in the middle, they've Gallen up front, they're Kieran Moore at the back or wherever he played. They have a lot of really good players that are focused, really fit, not afraid. A lot of the fundamentals that you need in a high performance team. And as I said, with Jim there to drive them on, I just think they'll come out of the blocks for Ulster, and they'll get stronger and stronger. And they get to Croker. With their running ability, I think they'll be a force to be reckoned with.
And Maurice, they open with Derry in Ballybofey next Sunday afternoon. How do you see Derry?
I've given Derry next to no chance for this weekend. They're down too many. Once Paddy Talley came out and said that Oran Lynch and Conor McCluskey and Garrett McInnes and Anton Tuttle and Brendan Rodgers and Niall Loughlin and Lachlan Murray are all injured. They just don't have the depth to sustain a challenge for that. So I think they're severely hampered for this weekend. Wouldn't be as down with them as on their overall league, but from an availability, it's the most important thing for a lot of teams this year, and certainly for Derry. And they just do not have the depth to sustain that many bodies without. Can I go back to something Eamon said there a minute ago? Because I think it's really interesting about the provincials and their place in the calendar. There's a conversation we don't need to have here, and it happens a lot. And this format is going to be gone after this year anyway, which is about the provincials' place and it is undeniably, I completely agree with him. It is the elephant in the room. It is the biggest impediment to a proper, genuine, brilliant championship structure. There's nobody who will, convince me otherwise. If we can get rid of them, I absolutely would. But all that said, just talk about it from a pure football perspective this year. A couple of questions I was thinking about this morning. Do Armagh realise that Stephen Campbell is better as a sub than he is starting, and that they need to change something up in their defence and get in Barry McCambridge if they don't make an Ulster final? What you learn as you're going for every single game, and you realise we have to make a couple of tweaks here. Do Galway make an All-Ireland final if they don't win a Connacht title last year? I think not. Do they land on their best team if they don't go full broke for Connacht last year? I don't think so. It's worth remembering, lads, that Footballer of the Year nominee John Maher did not start the Connacht final last year, and nobody would have said that he should have been. He came in after 20 minutes, was phenomenal, and kicked on from there. So there is something from a pure football sense, park everything else, park the competition, park all of that kind of stuff. There is something to be said for going out to win games and what you learn by going for broke after every single one of them. I think it stood to Armagh last year. I think it stood to Galway last year. you go back the year before, again, we've got a limited sample size, but the 2 All-Ireland finalists both went for the provincials and they both won them. So from that perspective, I do think the provinces do matter, that teams doing this kind of shadow boxing and this idea that they're going to look 6 weeks down the line, 6 weeks down the line, then suddenly your year is over. There is something to be said for just going, winning is a habit, and for a lot of teams, I think they could be better off going for their provincial title.
Lads, there's no shadow boxing in the championship. Are you saying the shadow boxing in the championship?
Absolutely.
I think we should ban that word shadow box.
Maybe I'm picking up wrong, Mark, but the idea that I think Eamon was touching on it there, I talked about it a few weeks ago. The idea of a management or a group that have been together and have had a focus and an agenda and a vision of what they're going to do this year and achieve, and that every game, every ball counts, and all that kind of stuff that you do day in, day out of training, and then you sort of turn around and this game doesn't matter, or we're qualified anywhere, or whatever it is. That'd send alarm bells off, I think, in a high performance team trying to get better and trying to develop in it. So every game you play, championship is absolutely foot to the floor. It's got to be, and you're trying to win it and trying to win it by as much as you can. That'd be my and I think anything else would be very difficult to.
But see what you're saying too, Maurice. Sorry, James. See what you're saying too, Maurice, in terms of finding out about themselves and road testing players and your team and that cutthroat environment. Can we not replicate that in the league? Can we not get a situation where we're doing that, where teams are going all? The league for me is the best product, and if we can create that like championship environment within Division 1 and within a league final, then that's the way. Because I agree with the logic in terms of what you're saying, but I just don't think that should be done in a provincial.
We're completely aligned on this, Eamon. I agree with you 1,000,000%. The league is a way better structure, but you have to deal with the hand you're dealt, like just the environment we're in. So I on that point, I could not agree with you more. And it is the best format we could possibly have. If we could maximize that, let's do it. Bit of talking about this week, right, that maybe there's going to be a 2-week gap between the league and the championship next year, which I think a lot of us would welcome. But all that said, for what we have this year, in terms of the environment that we're in, I think there's a lot of teams that a provincial title would mean a huge amount for them and would do a whole lot of good.
Okay.
In terms of the Ulster Championship, if we take it that Donegal are a lot of people's favourite to go on and win the All-Ireland, is there a disregard here for Armagh and Armagh's prospects, Maurice?
I would hope not. I mean, you could look at the Ulster final and how close they came last year. The difficulty for Armagh is, you're always looking at that. James would talk about a lot of teams. What's your point of difference? What's the one new thing you found to kick it on again for next year? So, and I think Armagh, a lot of it, you're banking on the hurt of what has happened prior, especially in Ulster, and using that to your disposal. But it looks like Rian O'Neill won't be involved. So have they found Darren McMullen has stuck his hand up now, in fairness, and looks pretty good. But have they found that couple of extra percent that's going to kick them on even more this year versus last year? I think Armagh will still be a right good team. Will they be a better team than they were in 2024? Remains to be seen. I'd be reasonably confident Kerry will be a better team. I think Galway will be a better team. I think Donegal definitely will be a better team. And that's the bar. Like, you want things are naturally starting to advance. So Armagh will get to the same level they've got to last year. They will be ferociously competitive. There is no doubt about that. But can they kick it on? That's the thing that they need to find out now. James, how do you see Armagh going?
Yeah, I think there was enough in the league. There was a bit up and down, but there's enough in the league that they were getting stronger, and they'll be very strong for championship. I think they'd love to win an Ulster title. I think they'll absolutely be going for it. But it took them a while to embrace the rules. I think the new rules, which is a factor. So maybe they're working on those, and maybe they'll get something out of that. I don't see any huge amount of new influx of players that will bring that maybe additional energy or freshness or whatever. So they don't seem to have that. But there's so many good players. There'll be a confidence there after last year. So of course they'll be competitive. They feel they'll beat anyone. So they'll be very, very competitive. But I just think when when it comes to it in Ulster that Donegal will have an edge on them.
I know you know Malachy O'Rourke very well, and not least from over the last couple of months or last year, you got to know him very well on the Football Review Committee. Now, I think Malachy may have a little bit of buyer's remorse about some of the rules that have come in.
If he had his chance again, there might be different rules.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyway.
But it will be done. Do you think this year will be a year too soon for Tyrone, allowing for the fact that very good young footballers coming through, a little bit late getting the Errigal players back? Is this a year too soon?
Yeah, you sort of feel that after the league, wouldn't you? It's sort of the idea, like there's this, and it's funny, in County, they're probably sick of people talking about the young talent that they have, and when those under-20s come through and all that kind of stuff. You don't know how many will come through, and you don't know when they'll come through or what rate they'll come through. You know, it can be very different depending on the young guy, and Derek Hanavan and the pressure that's on him. Once he's back, it'll be all sort of okay. So they've been a bit mix and match, but again, there is quality in the team. They have a very good manager. They've a solid test in their first game against Cavan. You know, you win that, and people get confidence and belief, and some young players say that they play well, and all of a sudden, you know, a team like Tyrone could go on they like their crusades. They can build and get a cause and away they go. So you don't know them, but you would sense what you've seen so far, just not there yet. Those players, some of those young players, need a little bit more time to gel with the senior guys.
Eamon, are Monaghan dark horses?
For Sam Maguire or for Ulster? Are we talking here?
Ulster first, anyway. Yeah.
I think they definitely will be dark horses for an Ulster championship. I definitely don't think they're in the conversation for Sam Maguire, but having seen a wee bit of them from Division 2, and we don't know with the league final in terms of, I think there was a bit, and I would say this about the Division 1 final as well, in terms of where Kerry are at, that we just don't know. There's a wee bit of kind of is come alum attitude. As an Irish saying, like, do we kind of really care about it? And there was a lot of people saying Monaghan performance was brilliant, but has it been really, really road tested here? So from what I've seen so far, they're definitely dark horses for Ulster, but I just wouldn't have them in the conversation for later on the year.
So we'll talk about the other counties and Down, and Down got relegated from Division 2. Fermanagh got stuck in the middle of Division 3. Antrim got stuck in the lower reaches of Division 3. There's nothing really. Thankfully, the Ulster Council caved in and saw sense on the playing of the game in Corrigan Park against Armagh. But it's not really, you can't really see a challenge on Ulster coming from there.
I don't think, I just to go back to something you said earlier, I Down wouldn't see very little difference between them and Monaghan. I think they definitely fancy themselves to go and to beat them, and similar teams in some ways. I think that it's been a very weird league. Like, you see teams who are going down and it's raised a fine margin. I was just thinking about with Tyrone, they're going down with 7 points. Like, there's often times when Malachy O'Rourke was over Monaghan where they were staying up on 4, which is just the nature of it. I think there's two kind of brackets there. Like, there's a Fermanagh and an Antrim who've had some promise in a Tailteann Cup and would probably have, as much as they would absolutely love to go gung-ho. I'd say there might be an eye on that, and we might return to that from some of the league final teams, is that if they're realistic about it, is a strong Tailteann Cup where their head is at now. And then you've got other teams who would absolutely fancy their chances of a scallop like a Monaghan or a Down. So from my perspective, like, you boil it down, I think Fermanagh and Antrim internally would be, if you're sitting down Saturday, you're saying we could absolutely win a Tailteann Cup, whereas Down, I think they're setting the bar to say that we could absolutely make an Ulster final, and that's just where their ambitions are.
Yeah, I think it's quite the reach. So let's call it, Maurice. Who'll win the Ulster Championship?
Donegal.
Eamon?
Go with Donegal, yeah.
James?
Yeah, you know me. Yeah, Donegal.
I think Armagh will win it. We'll move to Munster. The Munster Championship has been utterly dominated by Kerry, with the exception of one COVID game where Cork stung them with a late goal. All the suggestions are that Kerry are coming with a really, really serious team. I have a question, though, and the question is, have Kerry shown an awful lot in the league? Have they given people a really good look at themselves, James?
You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like, exactly. You can't win it. You should. Oh, Jesus, what have we done to the league? Like, honestly, the league, it's absolutely mental. Not alone do people not want to win the fucking league final or get to the league final. It's from the last 3 rounds out at this stage, people are starting to pull the handbrake. It's mad. And I agree with you boys. Like, it's a brilliant slog, hard, tough competition. It is. Division 1 can be a brutal division, and you should be going out to win it. You should have the freedom of winning it to go all for it and have your break here. And 2 weeks is tight, to be honest, after going from a league to a championship. To get, there needs to be time given there. Just end the story before the league turns into a complete farce. So that's the key one. Now that I was answering that, Paul, I've completely forgotten your question.
So I'm basically, I was asking you whether Kerry has shown too much, but I've actually regarded Jack put a huge stock on winning the league. Every time they've won the league, they've gone on and won the championship. Did you have any superstitions when you were manager of Mayo? Did you have any of those beliefs?
It was all data and facts. Facts what we call. There's no room for emotion or any of that kind of superstitious stuff. Of course, you pick up a few things, but yeah, the famous Jack wins league, wins championship or whatever. But I think Kerry got a lot out of the league, and Irish shown their hand. So that's all. That's all rubbish, to be honest, because everyone analysed to death, and every single person that follows football knows every Kerry player and could tell you lots about it and all the information that's available. So it's where Jack set out what they said they do and how did they do against it. But I would say on any metric, at any level for Kerry, Jack is very, very happy after the league. You'd have to think he's happy. Team, they played well in the final. They could have played better if they wanted. They were comfortable. Their pace energy was there. Playing the football. As I said, back to their identity, back to the type of game that Kerry people play since they're 4. The style and the foot passing and the movement up front. I think the new rules they've absolutely embraced them now, and it suits them, their skill set down to the ground. So I think they're going in. And look, the Munster Championship, it'll be really you'd have to fancy them that they'll win that comfortably, and they'll build to the latter stages. So yeah, Jack will be and Kerry are in a great spot.
Maurice, if you looked at Kerry's last 3 league games and you were involved in the analysis for a county that might come up against Kerry in the coming months, what would you be doing? How would you go about this now?
That's a great question, and I tell you why it's very hard. This Kerry versus the 2023 Kerry. I listened to your show on Sunday night, by the way, and I thought it was excellent. But Paddy Clifford is getting the national recognition that he deserves, and there's probably not much more to say about him. But just one thing, the difference in Kerry 2023 All-Ireland final and this Kerry is that Paddy Clifford is left-footed, right? Sean O'Shea is not. So if Paddy Clifford is playing at 11, there's a reason Paul Ganey is in a game more when Paddy Clifford is playing versus when David Clifford is playing. Like, just think about it from a biomechanics perspective. Right-footed players typically kick to the right-hand corner, left-hand players typically kick to the left-hand side. So Paddy Clifford opens up the 15 channel a lot for Kerry. There's way more variance in their attack when they attack through Paddy Clifford versus anybody else, because he's what he does from an orchestrated, and that makes it very, very hard. So if I'm Dublin 2023, me dropping Brian Howard from the wing-back position to cover up in front of David Clifford doesn't work anymore, because the other side is open now as well. It makes it very harder to defend against. So you've got to nail Paddy Clifford. Like, you have got to get, and if you can't nail him, you got to find someone who can. Like, you got to find an athletic freak.
There's not a counterpoint to that, though, Maurice. Is there not a counterpoint to that? Yeah, I get that with the left-footed player going that way, but Paddy and David they're so aligned with each other. It's everything runs together. You'd know it's brothers playing together. There's teams all over the country from club and county level who are used to this. That intuitive look.
Yeah, do you know, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
There's an episode that we're doing on David Clifford's performance in that league final last weekend in itself. I think very interesting thing to watch. Like he is a absolutely extraordinary talent. Like there's no getting away from that. But 10 shots from play, he scores 4 points. He's not like, he is absolutely exceptional. There's no getting away from that. But he's trying to develop tells, which is that breaking to the same wing, always trying to get back onto his left foot. That, like what he did in his early in his career versus how much more he only uses his left leg now is very striking. How little he uses his right foot. And when David Clifford is laying off the ball, he's arguably the greatest assister we've ever seen. Like he's phenomenal. He went into a Galway game 2 weeks ago. Johnny McGrath did excellent on him, and really marked that left foot. So he was forced to lay off ball, and he finishes with 7 assists. He's the absolute presence of their attack. At the weekend, that's not what happens. Has a bit of win, and he misses 6 shots. It's very interesting to watch when trying to get that balance right. Like when should David Clifford be the creator versus the shooter? I think it's there's the whole wider conversation about the role of a player like that in a team. But if you're looking at Kerry at the weekend, what are the 3 things they got absolutely right? The 2 Cliffords, you got to get that matchup right. That's so important. And with the performer Joe O'Connor now, with Jabin O'Connor to come back, midfield is going to be absolutely vital, especially with the new rules. So can you get on top there? It's massive. One advantage for Cork is that they have got monsters in the middle. They've got a lot of big bodies there. So there's kind of an onus on us. And I know, James, you would have been pretty critical of them in last year's Munster Championship meeting when they decided to concede against Kerry. Now they don't, whatever about last year, you don't have an excuse to do that this year. So if you can get those 3 pillars, but like a lot easier said than done. But sometimes you talk to an intercounty player and you kind of see how they think us stupid journalists actually think. But I was talking to Gavin White down at Clarny last week in Mucker's house for the Munster launch, and I asked him a kind of a generic question, but it's what is it? Is it 3 or 4 games now in a row that they haven't kicked any 2-pointers? And Gavin White very gently grabbed my hand and was walking me through step by step why this is the case, and was able to outline 2-pointers happen typically when attacks are slowed and teams are working around the arc. Now, if you watch Kerry, how often times did Kerry actually go slow? So because they play fast, that might be why. And I kind of had to nod and say, "Yeah, Gavin, that makes sense. Thanks a million for taking the time to explain that to me." But you got to, regardless of that, you got to slow them down, because when they are able to kick through you like that, they're just deadly and they'll carve a team open.
So Johnny McGrath is going to Paddy Clifford the next time if Galway play Kerry.
And who goes to David?
I don't know. Eamon, would you have liked to have a go at David Clifford?
No, I'd like to be able to just sit in my chair now and say I could have marked him rather than actually mark him. It's far easier now. No, I've talked about this before. The ego part of me would love to have had a pop in me. I think if you chat to any defenders, that they would say I'd love to mark Clifford. And the challenge is that's why teams need 3 dogs, in terms of them 3 defenders, because most teams are going to come up with a trio. Like you have Sean O'Shea, Paul Geaney, you have David Clifford, the 2 Cliffords. Like you need to shut down three, not just like kind of try and, you have to just shut them down and stop them completely. And that's why teams need to start developing real out and out defenders, and then just try and break even with that there.
In terms, Maurice, of Munster football, we'll come to Cork in a minute, but what's happening in Limerick?
Yeah, great question. And there's a lot to be said about that. And I know like some Limerick people are probably a bit unhappy that their Division 4 success didn't get maybe the attention it deserves across the board over the last week. But it's a complicated thing. Like there's a lot going on. There's 4 finals on, and it's hard. Sometimes it can be hard for people to get a firm grasp on it. But one, Paul, there's a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks about management teams and what's going on in different managements, and You're seeing, coaches stepping away, managers going, all sorts of fallouts and stuff. You look at Limerick, 2022, what Billy Lee achieved was phenomenal. And got them right there to Munster finals and up to Division 2. Ray Dempsey comes in the last 5 games. Mark Fitzgerald comes in and steadies the ship. And then, would have had his, I think he said what happened after was kind of silly with the appointment process and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, then Jimmy Lee comes in and, his job is just, can he get a firm foundation, something that they can build on? So league doesn't go well, they have kind of a mixed year, comes back and looks instead at kind of what can he impact? Because when Billy Lee was Limerick manager, there would have been a bit of talk about, surely they're benefiting from maybe even just the side effects of JP McManus and his investment in Limerick hurling. And lads, I wouldn't be so sure about that. I wouldn't be. I think Limerick football and Limerick hurling are two different entities, and Limerick hurlers are playing in the Gaelic grounds. Limerick footballers are bouncing around different grounds. Under Billy Lee, they played in 4 different grounds in one league campaign. The Limerick footballers are playing Cork this weekend in the Gaelic grounds. Be a very interesting thing to know, how often have the Limerick footballers actually trained in the Gaelic grounds before that Munster Championship opener? How much of a home advantage is it really? I'd love to know that. So I don't think that was where Limerick were at. But what they could do, right? The thing you can do as a manager is, can I get really good people involved? Limerick to the bone, local people, get them in and see what we'll do. So he goes and Pat Ranahan, who was a stalwart of the Limerick 2009 and 2010. 2009 lost by a point to Cork, 2010 lost by 3 to Kerry, most of the final team. And Pat Ranahan, after he retires, is the only thing he wants to do is develop Limerick football. So he becomes a volunteer games development officer for post-primary schools. And think about that. If you're a post-primary schools games development officer, you're taking time off work, because otherwise you can't get access to the lads you're supposed to be developing. And then he gets involved in the Limerick under 20s, and is I interviewed him a couple of years ago about coaching courses. I remember him telling me he did his level 1, his foundation, all the GA stuff, and then wanted to do more. So did a Satanta course, and then wanted to do more. So went into Phil Carney's UL Masters in Applied Sports Coaching and graduated out of that. And is now on board in Limerick. You saw him on the pitch, his arm around Ian Corbett, 15 years playing for Limerick. The 2 of them were, Ian Corbett, what a stalwart he has been, by the way. 2 boys stand there together. He went and got Michael Cahill, unbelievably qualified guy. He's actually working in Satanta as well. He's from Mungret. Evan Talty would know, he's the other side of is actually Clare originally, but of a very intimate understanding of the Limerick football scene. So basically, he got very, very good people involved, right? That's the first thing he did. That's what he had control over. And internally, they drove it. They have been, as a collective, what they've done this year is phenomenal. They've steadied the ship. You can talk about players up there with Ethan Rafferty. For me, Josh Ryan, the goalkeeper, there's very few as successful outfielders converted into goals as he has been. But a lot of that is coming from what management did over the last years. I think what they did was fairly phenomenal, and you saw the manifestation of that last weekend when their success in Croke Park. So all that said, I think Limerick would be realistic enough to say that the Tailteann Cup is a bigger deal for them than the Munster Championship. I'm not necessarily sure. I think they'll go for this weekend. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're going to pull the game or anything, but I would say there is definitely one eye on Tailteann Cup and getting a proper run in that.
It's interesting if you look at that draw. We'll come to Cork in a second, but on the other side of the draw are Clare, Waterford and Tipperary. Whoever comes out of those 3 gets to the Munster final and gets a place in the Sam Maguire. And I think on the balance of what we've seen in the league, that's going to be Clare, who are very unfortunate not to be promoted to Division 2. Now, my sympathy for Clare is somewhat balanced by the good fortune they have in the draw, which they're getting which gets them through the Munster Championship. But at the same time, it is a fact that they really should be in Division. They really should be in Division 2. And you would imagine that they're going to come through. And so we'll be looking at Clare. We've spoken about Clare quite a bit, and we'll come down. But James, it must be very difficult for football people in Tipperary and in Waterford to build a team in counties where hurling dominates. And I know you managed to do what you did with Mayo when football was still the only show in town, really. I know hurling matters in Mayo, and I know there's hurling people there, but it is very much the poor relation. And similarly in these counties, it must be exceptionally difficult.
Yeah, absolutely, it must be. You're starting from a very low low fan base, low resources, I would say, in terms of probably player amounts, and then facilities, etc. Maurice just mentioned some of them there. The Limerick footballers bouncing around the place, and I'm sure it's the same in Waterford and Tip to a certain extent. Where they're very, very strong hurling teams, and the support is for those hurling teams, and you have pockets of football centres, I suppose, and they're trying to hold that together, and it's difficult. They seem to lose numbers, lose players, yearly, trying to keep that together. So you've usually very, very loyal sort of football people in those counties trying to pull everything together. Not just managing the team, but managing the whole structure, the process, the working with the county board, where, as I said, resources might be very low towards the football team, and having to do stuff yourself and on your own back, and trying to get backing for certain things from people that where that goes it's such a challenge for those people, and it has to be admired what they do for the sport that they love to try and drive it on. But it's an uphill battle all the way, but it's something you can't get to either, or else you'll just become bitter and they get everything, we get nothing type thing. So they just have to drive it on, and it's a credit to them, but it cannot be easy.
Were you ever told by the county? Sorry, Maurice. Just one question. 1 second. Were you ever told by the county chairman that you couldn't train in Castlebar because the hurlers had the pitch?
No. Never said that. No, that was never even brought up. No.
But that's the scale of that's the scale of the difference. Maurice, sorry.
But just on what can Tipperary and Waterford do? Like, you have to, the only thing that to get ahead, like Waterford, when their first game in 10 years up against Tipperary last year in the championship, it was like a phenomenal day. We saw it, like Tom O'Connell, brilliant interview, scored 2-3 that day. What a great story. What a kick in the teeth for Waterford, that for his own reasons, not a criticism of him whatsoever, but Tom O'Connell joins the hurling panel this year. Like, that is just this guy was your top scorer in championship last year. It was a brilliant day, and you lose him at the end of the year. But the only thing you can do in that situation is try and find small wins. So what do Waterford do? Armagh go very, very close against Dr. Crokes in the Munster Club Championship, lose by a point. Conor Murray was in Australia last year, was playing on that team. He comes back as their captain. Conor Murray is also a teacher in Blackwater in Lismore, which is a hurling area, but he coached the under-17s. They won the under-17E Munster Championship. First title they've won ever. So what does Paul Shanky do? He goes to those kids and presents them with their medals, because you've got to find a small win. Like, you've got to find a way to make it somewhat attractive to play for the Waterford footballers. And just on that point, this Waterford Tipperary game, there's been a lot of talk about venues and where the games matter. Tipperary requested that game be played in Clonmel because there's actually a real rivalry between Waterford and Tipperary, like along the Nire there, mentioned Cormac, right up along the border there. Can you imagine that game in Clonmel? All the football people both there. Instead, it's fixed for Semple Stadium. I get the point about Championship needing big stadiums, but that is going to feel soulless in a big stadium like Semple Stadium. Can you imagine what it would be like in Clonmel? I think it is a real shame that request wasn't granted.
I agree. Eamon, I want to ask you about Cork footballers. And this is purely a matter of perception. From the far end of the country, looking down at Cork footballers, what do you see when you see Cork?
First of all, I love Cork, and I've kind of had an affinity for them since I was young. For some reason, just gravitated towards Cork footballers, and even the Cork hurlers. There's good people in there that I loved, and I can't understand. I remember chatting to Thomas O'Shea a few years ago, and he says if they could get their act together, they would be top of the pops. That's a direct quote from him. And I can't understand looking in why they can't be that, stronghold off football, and that's my perception of them, looking all the way from the top of the county, because I see that they tick every box in terms of what's needed, and I just don't understand why it doesn't happen. Maybe that's something internal, and maybe that's an identity, something that requires years to fix, but I just don't understand why they can't. That 2010 team in Cork, serious outfit, But why is Cork not producing that consistently?
And Maurice, the plan that Cork put together, it's at the end of the 4 or 5 year cycle. It's not clear what happens next. It's not clear who's going to be the next manager. John Cleary, will he stay another year? It wasn't clear he was going to stay this year. There are good players at under 17, under 20. They seem to struggle to get their best team out though, and all the while, the shadow of hurling looms large.
It does, but you kind of catch glimpses of how good Cork can be, and that's why on Eamon's
even
point,
within the
so
same match, within one match, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly.
You go back to their performance against Donegal last year, and it was phenomenal. And they, what they came up with.
Caught Donegal completely on the hop there with that performance.
And then you fast forward to what they did against Loud. So I think definitely that element of consistency. I have to say, the team they landed on towards the end of the league this year. You want to talk about the point difference, like Sean McDonald coming in and finding the spot on the wing. We talked about McSweeney before. Their inside three, like having Brian Hurley back, I think is so important. Not just because he is who he is, but also because of how the attention he attacks and what that might do for Mark Ronan or Chris O'Jones beside him. So all of that would bode well. But just that, like from a Cork perspective, happening again in this league, like it just feels like it's peaks and valleys so often, and there's nothing they can do necessarily about the perception of that. But if they could just string together a couple of consistent good performances, because they have had days where they beat Roscommon and Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and you hear the crowd there and you think, geez, there's something really here to build on. They beat Donegal, they've got something really here to build on. Now it's just about kind of banking that, like if you can log that consistently. I don't think anyone is here saying that we expect Cork to challenge for an All-Ireland title necessarily this year, but they should absolutely be a top 8 team. Like that is within their wheelhouse, and that starts this Saturday, obviously, and then kind of maintaining a consistent bank of form for the rest of the season.
But you're tipping Kerry to win the Munster Championship?
Yeah.
Kerry,
Eamon?
yeah.
James?
Yeah, quite well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm no surprise. I'm the same. Over to Connacht. James, will Mayo win the Connacht Championship?
I think they could, yeah. I think they could. I know getting all the recency out of the biases out of the way, and the performance, which was flat and I don't know, just a poor performance in the league final. If you leave that aside, there's a lot there. How close they were to go away last year. Mayo go will always be close. No, I'm obviously, there's obviously Roscommon and Sligo, etc. in here that are in the shout. But you're asking me if Mayo could win the Connacht title, absolutely, and I actually think they will. I think they could win Connacht, more than likely playing Galway in the Connacht final. So anytime Mayo Galway play in the Connacht final, I just always bet on them full stop on Mayo. So absolutely they could, but man, a lot of things, a lot of performance, a lot of players need to develop their performances, and everything needs to align. But absolutely, I think it could.
So the evidence of Croke Park in the league final would suggest that Mayo are quite a bit off. The evidence of the league was, and Mayo had some very good performances at different stages, but they were the width of a heroic Donegal effort to beat them. They were the width of a crossbar away from being relegated, and it's most unlike you to produce an emotional argument. But what you're producing here is an emotional argument. They
finished top of the league, Paul. You remember that, right?
I do, James. You have reminded me.
The fact, the data there, by hook or by crook or however they got there, no one still knows, but they did. So yeah, of course. But Mayo plays Sligo on at the weekend in Castlebar. Sligo's form at the end of the league started to pick up, and we know they have good young players over, a number of good teams over the last five years in particular. So that'll be a challenge. And they ran Galway close last year, all that kind of stuff. But you'd have to fancy You'd have to fancy Mayo to come through that, and then they've Leitrim in the next round. And we've seen Leitrim's performance, throughout the league, was a disaster. So that's Mayo. It beats Sligo out there in the Connacht final, and without too much, hassle, I would say. So they'll be really ready for that. So yeah, in whether it be Galway or whether it be Roscommon, I think Galway could take them. I'm not tipping Mayo for the All Ireland, Paul, but in terms of Connacht, I think they could give it a right rally.
Eamon, do you rate this Mayo team?
I actually do. I would have Mayo as dark horses maybe 3 years ago, but I think there's stuff they have to learn about themselves. They obviously have to, Aidan O'Shea. What are they doing with Aidan O'Shea? And they have to, and James knows the layout better than anybody here. You might disagree with this, but they have to find. If you listen to Ryan O'Donoghue in an interview after one of the league games where he says that he loved the helter-skelter, and that has served Mayo so well, but there's come a period of time where you've got to think it out. The pace has to be slowed down, and someone like Aidan O'Shea has to be central to the play in that. Again, James will know him better, but for me, he comes across as someone who can dictate play, can coach, and I think Mayo have to become better at that there in terms of when the helter-skelter and when that fast, chaotic, that mode that Mayo love, and we've seen it so many times, that, right, we'll revert back, we'll slow it down, and we'll think it out. We'll do a slow phase here, we'll open up a pocket, do for that two-pointer that Maurice talked about. But that's something they've got to become a lot better at, and they've got to find a defined role, or just to get Aidan O'Shea more involved, because for me he become the focal point at full forward, and they're a wee bit too reliant on Ryan O'Donoghue here, but O'Shea can become the focal point, and then he become that quarterback, that pivot role out the field when they do go into that slower period. So it's probably an identity thing, but they definitely have a squad there that can win the provincial. Whether they have the conversation in that top three for All Ireland, I don't think so. But they'll take a good team to beat them when they are going well.
James.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. I think that's very valid commentary. I think with new rules and with few other things that every team has to add to their game, you play to your strengths for sure, but you need to add something else. And if Maurice was analysing Mayo, it'd be very easy at the moment neutralise our scoring threat, I would say. Look what goal we do when Johnny McGrath was on Ryan, and that takes away huge amounts. So I suppose we're easy at the moment in maybe our predictability and how it's going to go. So it's maybe reducing chaos but adding unpredictability. If you understand the point I'm making, that that we're harder, maybe to neutralize. But yeah, there's times for real high tempo. If that works, great. Keep at it, foot to the floor. If that's not working, is there something else they're working on? And hopefully there is.
Maurice.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to the weekend, like I was not impressed by Mayo's performance, don't get me wrong, but I thought the best player on the pitch was Aidan O'Shea, and it's kind of remarkable that the guy is kicked 3 points, was fouled for at least one free, maybe two, one definitely, and every single ball he gets is a hand pass. Like, he's not kicked the ball he scored 3 points in Grove Park, and he wasn't kicked the ball once for any of them. Like, look at the guy's look at this guy's hands, his physical presence, how good he is over his head. So it just seems like go back to easy wins. That seems like a blatantly easy win for me, is to get him in. Maybe James knows more. The mixed reports about Tommy Conroy's health at the minute, or if we're going to see him back. I do think he's a loss in terms of having another threat in your inside forward line. To see Jim O'Connor back is massive. I think he's a huge player for Mayo. And similar thing with Paddy Durkin. Bring those three back, and they absolutely can. I mean, I'm going to parrot what James said. I agree. I don't see them as winning an All-Ireland. I can absolutely see them winning a Connacht title.
Eamon, you think Galway are going to win the All-Ireland? Why is that?
As I said, that comes with the caveat of they stay injury-free. And I think that if Finnerty had stayed fit, there's a possibility that they would have already won an All-Ireland last year. And you might disagree in that, but just thought that if he had stayed on the field and able to keep Galway ticking over. But you get Comer fit and going well. I think he's just a destructive force on that. And we go back to the focal point thing. I just love Damien Comer. Love him. Love to watch him. He's one of my favourite players. Shane Walsh looks to be in the mood this year, and what he'll bring in terms of the 2 point arc. So I just think they have so much. John Maher's continuing his form. The big man for the kicker, the way the kickout's going to go, and I just think it suits Galway this year. And I just think that because they've been about, that final hurdle and All-Ireland finals, that experience counts for a lot, and I think that'll count for a lot and they'll be able to get over the line.
And Maurice, your former midfield partner from the University of Galway Freshers team, Peter Cook, is back in the panel.
I'm not sure he's back yet. Actually, I'm not so sure about those reports. But the plan is that he is to come back. They're after the States on. We're recording on Wednesday, Thursday, and I mean, it's 2 years in a row now that Pádraig Joyce has been very generous and let a player come in after missing an entire league in Cian Hernan, and now Peter Cook. Similar profiles, actually. Kind of pocket knife players, very big. You can clearly see what there's a profile of player that Galway very clearly like right now, and Peter Cook fits it. I don't know with it. Like, I wouldn't expect Peter Cook to be. I think Peter will have to earn a spot, like get into the, and that might take a bit of time, to be honest, actually. But I do think it's a plus. Like there was very clearly a plan here. They had a very big plan for the league. Every single player was going to New York. They would. And Park would have been involved in teams that went to New York, and it would have been a bit of a circus. And the lesson they've learned from that is actually that they're just going to, they're not staying an hour and a half outside the city. They're staying in the main street in Manhattan, and they're going to enjoy this. They're going to take care of the game, but they're going to mingle with supporters and maximize this. And then I wouldn't be surprised if there's a fairly significant push of this panel after that New York game, and they start to seriously build for championship. Post this game, it starts to ramp up a bit. So I if you're looking at a team for Galway this weekend, I'd say Dylan McHugh won't play. A couple of lads who mightn't be suited to playing on Astro won't play, and they'll start to try and steadily build from there. But I mean, all that said, I think the Eamon's core point is absolutely valid. Galway's best chance for this year is keeping Shane Walsh, Damien Comer, Dylan McHugh on the pitch, fit Sean Kelly, yeah. I think as Eamon, you've got this idea in my head now about every team needs 3 dogs. Like, I think Connacht is one of those few province that, or maybe the only province that you could say, every single team in this province has their 3 dogs. You've got it across. With stacks of the dailies in Roscommon, you've got like a Johnny McGrath, Sean Fitzgerald, Sean Kelly in Galway. You've got McBrien, McHugh, or Enda Hession in Mayo, Mark Diffley or James Rooney in Leitrim, Sligo, Evan Lyons, Nate Mullen, Luke Towie. Like, you've got lads who will take care of that. It's maybe at the other end of the pitch that some of these teams are lacking.
James, Roscommon kind of fell away in the league, and we're going to look more in depth at Roscommon next week, so we're not going to stay too long on those. But there was a lot of talk that the new rules should suit the Roscommon forwards, and it kind of looked at the beginning like it was going to, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, it doesn't really look like that anymore.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting, the championship. The 2 point scoring rate. what's going to happen to that? I'm not so sure you're going to get the time and space that you got in the league, to take those shots. And I think the defensive line is going to come that 2, 3, 4 yards further out. What's needed to put pressure on that scoring zone. So I think your 2 point, Eric, that could impact Galway too. It won't impact Kerry, because I thought Paul Geeney's interviews was very interesting. That they play what they see. They're going for a score. It's not a 2-pointer. It's what they're going for goal. They're going for whatever it is. And if the 2-pointer is the right play, they take that. And I just thought that's exactly right. That's exactly the way they're playing.
I asked Jack on Sunday if does it matter that they didn't score a 3-pointer in their last 3 games, James? And his response was
a 2-pointer.
A 2-pointer. And he said, I wouldn't care if we did score one for the rest of the year as long as we keep winning.
100%. 100%. What's the right thing? What's the right thing for that attack and where things are? 100%. I think they're so. But I think it'll be interesting. Yeah, and there is a lot of talk. We chat about this before. There's a lot of talk about the threat of Roscommon's forwards, and absolutely they've got good forwards, but they'll be marking very, very good backs, as Maurice said, in Connacht, and so I'm not sure. I'll tell you what's a worry for maybe Roscommon is Enda Smith's form, and where he's at, because he's the difference. He's the inspiration when things aren't going right. He makes that dramatic 60-meter runs past a lot of people and 6 in the net or whatever it is. So that might be a concern, but Roscommon's forwards, the Murtagh obviously, and Ben O'Carroll seems to be fit again, so he'll win a lot of ball. But they will be heavily marked in every game that they play. So it's who else is going to do the scoring.
We'll be looking at Sligo after the game at the weekend, and we'll look at Leitrim in the preview before the Mayo game. But call it, James. So you're saying Mayo for the championship?
Mayo for the Connacht title, yeah.
Eamon.
I will go with Galway. I think Galway will just, after that New York game, put the foot to the pedal and just go and see where it takes them through provincial and through the All-Ireland series.
Maurice.
Yeah, Galway as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Mayo. I want to talk now about the Leinster Championship, the jewel in the crown. And I have to put it to the 3 of you that this is probably the first GAA Championship preview for a decade and a half in which no pundit has suggested that Dublin will win the All-Ireland. Eamon.
And in terms of, are you saying, is there a chance for any team in Leinster? Is that what you're insinuating?
I'm leaving the door open.
No, there's not. And I'll tell you, when I think about the Leinster Championship, I think about, one of them films there where there's been a nuclear apocalypse and society attempts to rebuild from scratch, and that's what the Leinster Championship is. It's the Dublin, one of the greatest teams to ever play the game, has just decimated the landscape of Leinster, and the rest of the Leinster teams are starting to rebuild here, and there will be, but it's going to take time because it's psychologically ingrained into them at this stage just to lie down at the sight of a Dublin jersey, and that'll take time, and teams will, I think if you put the likes of Meath, if you put the likes of, I'm not sure about Kildare, what Kildare are at, but if you put Meath in an Ulster Championship, they would be competitive. But for some reason, you put them into a Leinster Championship, in the last few years, and they just lie down now. So in terms of any other team winning, it's going to be Dublin for the next few years until society is repaired in Leinster.
As someone who wanders around that wasteland myself, and
sorry, Paul,
I've tried to learn how the use of fire again, and rebuilding from the basics. I think I can understand exactly what you're saying. I think it's turning, and I think it has turned. I do think Dublin will win the Leinster Championship. But I think we saw enough evidence from the league, particularly when Dublin travelled out of Croke Park that they were really, really struggling to deliver performances, and that there is a drop off in quality of players inevitably. It's not just that Dublin have loads of players; it's that they had generationally brilliant players. We know all this; it's to state the obvious. And the players who have replaced them are all good footballers. They're just not in the same level. And I agree with you, Eamon. It'll take time for that to change. And I think we've seen from the league that Kildare are not ready yet. And I agree. I thought Brian Flanagan was very measured in his interviews afterwards. And he pointed out the players who'd come through from the 2018 under 20 team and the 2022 and the 23 ones. So I can see what they're doing there. And they're a couple of years away. I think Offaly equally are a couple of years away. And the problem for me is that they also look like they're a couple of years away, but you can't always be a couple of years away. And that means that the four of us here are going to tip Dublin to win Leinster, isn't that right? Or is anyone going to go for Louth?
No, it's Dublin. It's Dublin all the way. Is patchy a word for them, you know, during the league, but there was one or two games you already thought, wow, these boys are coming again, you know, and then there's a up and down. So it's hard to know. But if you think again, Leinster Championship, and they can use the Leinster Championship to develop and build and grow. By the time it gets to the series end, they'll be there, and you know. It's possible. Of course, it's possible for them. A team like Dublin, they have enough good players, and you know, Sean Bugler and players that are coming back, and you know, the knowledge that they have. So of course it's possibility, but they'll absolutely. Leinster is not a doubt.
On this show last year, I picked Dublin's 15, and it was Eamon who was on at the time, and the three of you laughed at me, but the only person who seemed to listen was Desi Farr, because he started playing Sean Bugler as a wing back after I said he should do it. I'm going to do the same thing here again.
Wow.
This is the 15.
It's unbelievable.
That's some stretch, pal. This
is what we're dealing with every week now. It's really difficult.
Cluxton, Merchant, Theo Clancy, Davy Byrne. There's your full back line. Half back line, Greg McEnany, Sean McMahon and Lee Gannon. Midfield, Brian Howard, Tom Lahiff. Bugler, Kilkenny, Scully, Pascal, Conor Callahan and Costello. And my subs in are Paddy Small, Keane Murphy, Killy McGuinness, Paddy Coffey Byrne or James Madden, Lorca Liddell or Luke Brannock, not both Reader, and Emran Coverford can back up Cluxton. It's still not about 15.
Yeah, it's not.
That's why I don't like these stats, boys, because managers can go on a feeling here, and then the stats man will just come in and just destroy that feeling. And you're 100% right, Maurice, you know, in terms of what's, I just think that and it goes back to a vibe or a feeling or whatever it is. I just don't think Dublin are in that top three for me.
Yeah. Can I ask a question, Eamon? If you were Dublin's goalkeeper and Stephen Cluxton returned to the panel again, would you stay around?
It's a good question. I don't. There's a role for Stephen Cluxton in a coaching role. I just think that they eventually have to move on without him. I think, and it should have been done. That should have been done maybe a year or two ago, because it's hard to get traction. It's hard to build up with a new keeper, and you know, when you have Stephen Cluxton looking over your shoulder, and the love the Dublin fans have for him, and his status as a legend in the game now. So I think, I'm not sure it was the right decision to maybe play him in that league game. What
about you, James?
Yeah, I sort of agree with them. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and the difficulty of what it does, like talk about letting the air out of the balloon. Like if you're a young player and you're doing well in the league, and you know that Stephen Cluxton's coming back in later on, you know, what does that do for, you know, you're as a manager talking about growth and development, and then yet you know there's Stephen's coming back in. It's a hard one to manage. It's very hard, and you have to weigh up the pros and cons. The manager, and Desi must have done that, and feels that there's benefit to that Dublin team with Stephen Cluxton playing a goal. So you know it's his call, but it's a very, very difficult one. And if it doesn't work, the house could come down. We've got some of those younger players that are impacted by the decision. So there's all that. So it's, there is a time. There definitely is a time where you need to make that decision.
I think that's right. And I think if you look at the other side of the draw in Leinster, so the way the draw in Leinster is Meath play Carlow, the winners play Offaly, and the winners of that will most likely play Dublin, who will beat the winners of Wicklow and Wexford. And then coming through the far side of the draw, most likely it's most likely going to come from, not allowing for the fact that Wexford have made a huge amount of progress, it's most likely going to come from Kildare, Louth or Westmeath. And it is again, we're saying, Eamon, you're saying Dublin as Leinster champions?
Dublin as Leinster champions. Yeah.
And James, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Morris.
Yeah, agreed.
We're going to have in-depth coverage every week during the championship. We've a whole load of plans on how we're going to try and get inside games, inside the stories of teams, and inside the championship in what feels like the most open All-Ireland championship for many years. We hope you will come with us throughout the summer when it finally arrives, or maybe it's just arriving. And thank you for joining us. A huge thank you to Eamon Magee for joining us from Donegal, to James Horan and to Morris. Thank you to Raf Rocca, to Tony Lean, to Larry Ryan, to Adrian Russell, and to everyone at Examiner Sport. Béimi Turnash Galua.
A grain of rice, a grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lad.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
This